I feel like I could be very good.
Welcome, everyone. The November 6th meeting of the Baltimore County Planning Board is called to order. I'm Scott Holupka, Chair of the Board. We will now start the meeting with a roll call to account for the members of the board present. When you hear your name, please say aye. Mr. Array? Ms. Brophy?
Aye.
Mr. Duval?
Aye.
Ms. German?
Aye.
Mr. Heckman?
Aye.
Mr. Heinel? Not here yet. Mr. Hinton?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson? Here yet. Ms. Lilly?
Aye.
Ms. Muneses?
Aye.
Mr. Schulman? And Mr. Tennant. We now all please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Thank you. Board members, please remember to unmute your microphones when you are speaking and mute it when you are finished, both for the people in the audience and for anyone who's watching us online. Ms. Bensley, are there any changes to the tentative agenda as published?
No changes.
In the October 30th email, you received draft minutes from the October 16th meeting. Hopefully everyone has had an opportunity to review the draft minutes. Are there any corrections or additions to the October 16th, 2025 meeting minutes? Not hearing any, I will entertain a motion to accept the minutes as circulated.
Motion.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. First on our agenda, we have a presentation by Ms. Jennifer Nugent of the Department of Planning regarding updates to the residential sections of the Comprehensive Manual of Development Policies. Following Ms. Nugent's presentation, board members will have the opportunity to ask questions, and then I will call for a motion to schedule a public hearing on the matter. Ms. Nugent.
Hello, good evening. I'm coming before you all today as the final effort with our department's project of updating the comprehensive manual development policies. The CMDP is enabled by Section 504.2 of the Baltimore County zoning regulations. And its intent is to codify in an appropriate and practical form a comprehensive manual of the land use and development policies and zoning regulations. So it's intended to include provisions set forth in the BCZR, subdivision regulations and other regulations or content as deemed relevant by the Department of Planning and the Planning Board. Any revisions or changes to the CMDP must first be presented to the Planning Board and then to the County Council for approval. The proposed manual change shall take effect 45 days after submission to the Council. So to backtrack a little bit, in April of 2021 is when our department began this endeavor, and we started with the appendix section, which had numerous adopted guidelines for specific areas. It had the downtown Towson district. It had provisions explaining about PUD process and other items. Then, followed by that, in 2023, we updated and presented to you the commercial section of the CMDP. So those two sections have been in this new format, and the intent of the update was to make the document more of a living document so that any updates we do need to do, it's done in a more modern format. We got rid of pagination and divided it up into sections. So this is our official new cover. Just wanted to highlight that right off the bat. And so what we did throughout the entire document, and with the help of some of our staff, specifically I'm showing these pictures because we were using drone technology to get some more relevant images of subdivisions throughout Baltimore County instead of trying to find stock photos and wanted to get rid of all the hand drawings that the manual currently is in its form. So to backtrack for a refresher, this CMDP was adopted by the Planning Board in 1972. So that's how long this document has been around. And there have been subsequent amendments in 1988, 92, and 2006. And so it's really useful to refer to for standards, guidelines, and regulations that not only we, our planning department use, but all the county reviewing agencies use to help steer commercial and residential development so that it complies within the goals of the master plan as well as the county zoning regulations. We also intend its use by the public for when development projects are being created throughout the county. It does help us rely heavily on this document in the absence of any specifically adopted design guidelines for any specific area of the county. And these general guidelines and principles related to the residential and commercial development help in leveraging desirable design outcomes. So as I mentioned previously, up to today's timeframe, this document was a static black and white manual. We've now updated it and hyperlinked a lot of the code references, so the ease of use for any particular item could be referred back to the county code or the zoning regulations as appropriate. A lot of the content in the residential sections of the CMDP, because of past legislation in the last several years, made it either outdated or obsolete. So the reason why this section we saved for the last, because we knew it was going to take some extra time to really scrub the zoning regulations. And with the help of the zoning office and PAI, we were able to kind of get everything updated that we needed to do. And so the entire residential section, it's broken into 3 subsections. There's residential standards, which puts in visual and explanatory form the zoning regulations, and then the residential guidelines and residential compatibility are the 2 subsections. When I say that we changed it from the previous version because some items were recategorized or redefined. And one of the biggest issues we had was one of the things in the alternative site designs. It was originally termed the neo-traditional. And somewhere around 2015, I'm not really sure why or who or by whom, but they changed it in the zoning regulations to read as traditional, which is super confusing. So we kind of updated that section in the CMDP so it's clearly explained what it is and how it's applied. So that's just kind of an example how we took something that needed fixing. We used color coding to follow logical sequencing of these different sections. This is the table of contents and glossary of terms. The current glossary of terms we did not update as of right now. We thought the glossary of terms are suitable. If we feel we need to update those, we'll bring those back to you. But we decided to leave them for now. And then these are just examples of what the new format looks at, is color graphics and photographs, and then breaking it down section by section and the different housing types in the standards. Residential guidelines are following a similar format that we did in the commercial section, where we're talking about site planning, parking and circulation, open space, street lighting, and signage. And then finally, residential compatibility, which is a code requirement. In this section, it's just a lot of words. And so we were trying to more visually explain what all the words were meaning so it's more user-friendly. So that's a recap of the update, and I'll go more in depth at the next meeting. Any questions?
Yeah, quick question. So this manual is just a collection of policies that are either in zoning or what other agencies. So it's not putting forth
No new
planning,
policies. No,
no new policies, and you're not making any new suggestions or anything like that?
no.
Okay. All right, I wanted to get rid of something.
So that actually raises a question. How would that happen?
Well, you all have been furnished a copy. So if, you have, want to come back at the next meeting and make some suggestions, or even in the interim, is that allowed? In the interim, they can certainly ask me questions or
But
clarification.
we can't change something that's already in zoning, right? No.
No.
Okay.
I would suggest, though, Mr. Heckman, that if in fact the board felt that there was something that should be changed in the zoning regs or in the code, and you brought that forward, we, as a department, could at least, we will run it up the flagpole, see what that implication is for future change. Can't do it through the CMDP,
Right.
but if there's strong feelings or sentiment about such changes, I'm happy to talk with you about what that might look like.
Okay. I'll talk to you about it.
Ms. Brophy?
So, like you said, we already did the commercial piece as well as the appendix. So is the idea now to combine it into one giant?
This will
living
all be
document?
one document.
Okay, but even though it's living, breathing, it's just the hyperlinks to the Muni code. That's the living part, right? Like it's not going
Yes.
to be like the story maps that are like.
No, you can print this out. It's
Okay,
printable.
got it. Okay, and then the purpose of it, like you said, there's still small area plans. Like obviously we have a public hearing about one tonight. Is this meant to be overarching over that? Like if there's not a small area plan in place with design and certain guidelines, this would be the guideline that would overarch for the whole county?
Yes. But I am going to emphasize that this front section, the one that the residential standards, those are following the zoning regulations. So really, those are going to, in terms of residential development, those standards are going to, I guess you could say, be a companion to whatever is going to be in the small area plans. But I think a lot of the guidelines and principles that are throughout the CMDP are general, that they could be applied anywhere in the county.
Are there any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to set a public hearing.
Be it moved that the Baltimore County Planning Board set a public hearing regarding the updates to the Comprehensive Manual of Development Policies for Thursday, November 20th, 2025 at 5 p.m.
Do I have a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Other business. Ms. Bensley will now fill us in on legislation recently passed by the county council following our last meeting, which is much shorter than the last time.
Thank goodness for all of us for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bill 6725 zoning regulations, uses permitted in the office building residential OR1 zones for the purpose of permitting the storage of construction equipment if such storage is related to a state highway construction project and generally relating to uses in the OR1 zone. Resolution 4925, Maryland Department of the Environment Permit, Days Cove Reclamation Company, a resolution of the Baltimore County Council urging the Maryland Department of the Environment to deny the wastewater permit requested by Days Cove Reclamation Company, which operates a rubble landfill on state-owned property at 6425 Days Cove Road, and to initiate a plan to close the site due to ongoing concerns related to pollution and non-compliance with previous environmental permits. Resolution 5025, 2024 CZMP correction of issues. A resolution of the Baltimore County Council requesting that the Director of Planning amend the official comprehensive 5th District zoning map to return the zoning of the properties or portion thereof involved in 2020 24, CZMP issues 5-095, 5-171, and a portion of 5-06096 to the zoning classifications that existed prior to the commencement of CZMP 2024. And that concludes the report.
Thank you, Ms. Bensley. This is the conclusion of our agenda. Before we leave, I do want to acknowledge that Mr. Heinel has joined us as well. We will reconvene for a public hearing on Small Area Plan 11 at 5 p.m., so about 15 minutes from now. Do I have a motion to adjourn the board meeting?
Motion.
Second? All in favor? See you in a couple minutes.
I mean,
I'm paying attention.
you should from-
Okay, thank you, everyone. Good evening again, and welcome to the Baltimore County Planning Board public hearing on Small Area Plan 11. The public hearing is now called to order. I'm Scott Alupta, Chair of the Planning Board. We will start with a roll call to account for members of the board present. When you hear your name, please say aye. Mr. Array?
Aye.
Ms. Brophy?
Aye.
Mr. Duval?
Aye.
Ms. German?
Aye.
Mr. Heckman?
Aye.
Mr. Heinel?
Aye.
Mr. Hinton?
Aye.
Ms. Lilly?
Aye.
Ms. Munezes?
Aye.
Mr. Schulman?
Aye.
Mr. Tennant?
Aye.
Thank you. Small Area Plan 11 was introduced at the October 16th, 2025 board meeting with a presentation by Ms. Megan Oliver of the Department of Planning. Tonight, Ms. Oliver, along with Ms. Jess Elliott Meyer and Mr. Aid Abdi, are here to further present the item to the board. Following their presentation, board members will have a chance to ask questions, and then we will have the opportunity to accept public testimony on the matter. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Oliver, Ms. Meyer, and Mr. Abdi.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jess Elliott Meyer. I'm the community planner for District 7, and I'm here with Megan and Iad to present Small Area Plan 11 to the Planning Board. The purpose of this presentation is to give the Planning Board an overview of this document. The Small Area Plan is rooted in Baltimore County's Master Plan 2030. This was adopted in January 2024, and it outlined a vision and strategies for growth over the next 10 years. While Master Plan 2030 outlined strategies at the county level, the Small Area Plan zooms into a smaller geographical scale, offering a more fine-grained approach and identifying priorities at a local level. The systematic development of small area community plans allows the Department of Planning to identify specific place-based strategies for advancing the goals of the master plan while supporting the visions and addressing key issues and concerns of individual communities. So prior to Master Plan 2030, the initiation of any small area plan came from representatives within a community. They would approach council with a desire to update an existing plan or to create a new one. And this became an equity concern as communities with more resources to self-organize and self-advocate could more easily access planning expertise and attention than neighborhoods without as many resources. So this small area plan process takes an entirely new systematic approach to creating community plans, employing a more equitable process that distributes planning resources throughout the county to all communities. As they are adopted, each small area plan exists as an amendment to Master Plan 2030. So Small Area Plan 11 is the first of the county's small area community plans. Area 11 is on the eastern side of Baltimore County, and it encompasses the areas of White Marsh, Middle River, Bowley's Quarters, Essex, and Rossville. The area is unique in many ways. For example, it's a very coastal group of communities, but yet it also embodies many of the county's strengths and challenges overall: an evolving industrial economy, aging infrastructure, changing demographics, rising housing costs. So this process brought together community voices from across the area to talk about these challenges and opportunities and to develop equitable, actionable strategies. My colleague Iad Abdi is going to give you an overview of the area characteristics.
Thank you, Jess. So Small Area 11 covers a unique and historically significant section of eastern Baltimore County, home to Middle River, Essex, White Marsh, Bowley's Quarters, and Rossville. Together, these communities showcase a mix of post-war neighborhoods, rural waterfronts, major retail centers, and aging industrial corridors shaped by a legacy of aerospace, maritime, and military activity. Area 11 spans about 75 square miles and is home to nearly 105,000 residents, roughly 12% of the county's population. It also contains 60% of the county's shoreline, making its connection to the water central to its identity, economy, and culture. Today, the area stands at the point of transition, balancing new growth, redevelopment, and infrastructure challenges. Key assets include the strong transportation links, natural waterfront spaces, and major anchors like MedStar Franklin Square Medical Center, CCBC Essex, and Martin State Airport. This section paints a portrait of Area 11, its people, places, and potential, setting the stage for the opportunities and recommendations that follow. Area 11 is well connected regionally with major highways like I-95, I-695, Pulaski Highway, and Eastern Boulevard, providing access for commuters and freight. But these same corridors also act as barriers, separating neighborhoods and limiting local connectivity. On the eastern side, the abundance of waterfront areas adds to the challenge, creating traffic bottlenecks where just a few roadways link the peninsulas to the rest of the area. Public transit is primarily served by the MTA bus routes and the MARC train station at Martin State Airport, which connects to the Baltimore-Washington corridor. Coverage and frequency is limited in some neighborhoods, but the MTA's 2025 Be More bus plan proposes expanded service and 2 new routes for eastern Baltimore County. Pedestrian and bike networks remain inconsistent, with many areas lacking sidewalks or safe cycling routes. Area 11 is rich in natural and recreational resources, especially along its extensive waterfront. The Middle River and Back River provide ecological value, scenic beauty, and spaces for boating and recreation. Parks like Marshy Point Nature Center and Rocky Point Park are major destinations for hiking, kayaking, and environmental education, while Eastern Regional Park and neighborhood parks offer fields, playgrounds, and gathering spaces. However, parts of the area face environmental challenges, including water quality issues from runoff and industrial activity, and flood risks in low-lying communities like Bowley's Quarters. Former industrial sites like CP Crane and Lafarge also present exciting opportunities to expand public access to open space. Area 11's population has grown steadily since 2010 at roughly twice the county's growth rate, while becoming both older and more diverse. Residents over 65 have increased by about a quarter. Today, white residents make up just over half the population, followed by Black, Hispanic, Latino, Asian, and other racial and ethnic groups, reflecting a truly multicultural community. The area is home to a balanced mix of generations, from young children to seniors, highlighting the importance of planning that meets the needs of a multi-generational population, including housing, transportation, healthcare, and education. Housing in Area 11 is a mix of single-family homes, townhouses, and low-rise apartments, with older neighborhoods around Essex and Bowley's Quarters, and newer developments in White Marsh and Middle River. Rising home values and affordability pressures underscore the need for diverse housing options, reinvestment, and programs that support safe, stable housing for all residents. The economy in Area 11 is varied, anchored by healthcare, retail, and education, alongside small businesses and waterfront-related activity. Rossville is a primary employment hub with MedStar Franklin Square Medical Center and CCBC Essex, while White Marsh drives regional retail through centers like White Marsh Mall, the Avenue, and Nottingham Square. Other employment clusters include the White Marsh Business Center, Pulaski Highway and Philadelphia Road corridors, Greenleaf Crossroads, and areas near Martin State Airport. Some older commercial corridors face aging infrastructure and vacancies, yet they also present opportunities for reinvestment. Newer commercial developments, such as Greenleaf, are attracting tenants and revitalizing the local economy, and Bowley's Quarters contributes through marinas, hospitality, and waterfront tourism. Daily commuting patterns show that while Area 11 brings in over 33,000 workers each day, many residents commute out for work, mostly towards Baltimore City and Trade Point Atlantic. This highlights ongoing opportunities to align local jobs with local residents and strengthen economic connections across the area. The first area is White Marsh. White Marsh spans 5.3 square miles and is home to just over 10,000 residents. The community has rapidly diversified in recent years, and the proportion of residents over 65 has risen to align with county averages. White Marsh also has a higher median household income than the county overall. Historically farmland, White Marsh transformed following the construction of I-95, becoming a planned community anchored by White Marsh Mall, the Avenue, and Nottingham Square. While heavily car dependent, White Marsh benefits from local and intercity bus connections, linking residents to downtown Baltimore and other major cities across the East Coast. Recent developments include the Commercial Revitalization District designation at White Marsh Mall and the redevelopment of the former General Motors site on Pulaski Highway into modern office and warehouse space. The White Marsh Mall node is a regional commercial node characterized by an aging multi-story shopping mall that has seen significant changes in recent years with shifting retail trends. While the vacancy rate at White Marsh Mall remains low, much of the property remains underutilized and car-oriented, dominated by extensive parking lots. Despite surrounding residential areas, it's difficult to access the mall on foot or by bike. There is significant redevelopment potential, offering opportunities for infill and needed community assets. Middle River spans 7.8 square miles and is home to roughly 32,000 residents, making it the fastest growing sub-area in Area 11. The population is increasingly diversified with significant growth in Asian, multiracial, Black, African-American residents. The area is primarily residential, but has a rich industrial and manufacturing history anchored by sites like the former Middle River Depot and Lockheed Martin facilities. Transportation connections include the MARC train station, Martin State Airport, and major roadways. Waterfront and green spaces are key assets, including Hawthorne-Mithorn Park, Kingston Park, Wilson Point Park, Eastern Regional Park, and the Marshy Point Nature Center, providing recreational and ecological value. The Glenn L. Martin Aviation Museum preserves the area's aviation legacy. Economic redevelopment is also underway with the Middle River Commercial Revitalization District and growth in the Greenlee area, creating new opportunities for business and community investment. The Eastern Boulevard Martin State Airport node is a key mobility hub in Area 11 where multiple transit modes intersect. Today, it serves high ridership transit stops and basic infrastructure, but it holds strong potential to evolve into a fully integrated multimodal center. The Eastern Boulevard Middle River neighborhood node supports the nearby mobility hub and surrounding residential areas. Today, it is dominated by single-use buildings and large parking lots, primarily facilitating vehicular traffic along Eastern Boulevard. There is strong potential to transform this node into a more dynamic neighborhood center. Bowley's Quarters is a 3.1 square mile peninsula community in eastern Baltimore County, surrounded by marshland, creeks, and the Middle, Gunpowder, and Seneca waterways. Home to just under 7,000 residents, the community has strong maritime and boating traditions, with about 70% of residents being white and a median household income above the county and state averages. The area is primarily residential with limited retail along Eastern Avenue and at Carroll Island Shopping Center. The former CP Crane Generation Station historically provided local jobs until its demolition in 2022. A portion of the 153-acre site now is being remediated and redeveloped into open space, offering new opportunities for community recreation and environmental restoration. Essex is a 9.3 square mile peninsula community with just under 41,000 residents, making it the most densely populated sub-area in Area 11. The area is primarily residential with medium to high density neighborhoods in a commercial corridor along Eastern Boulevard. Median household income is below the county average, and the community faces accessibility challenges due to its peninsular geography. Historically a hub for maritime commerce, Essex retains its waterfront identity. Eastern Boulevard serves as a critical spine for this community, but safety and economic challenges have affected its vitality. Revitalization efforts, including the Essex Commercial Revitalization District, the Essex Sustainable Community Designation, and the Essex Reimagined Initiative, have focused on reducing blight, improving streetscapes, and strengthening local commerce. Nearby Hart Miller Island State Parks offers 1,100 acres of restored natural habitat and recreational opportunities, attracting visitors for boating, hiking, bird watching, and more, highlighting the ongoing connection between Essex and the Chesapeake Bay. Rossville spans 5.4 square miles and is home to roughly 15,000 residents. It's Area 11's only majority minority neighborhood. The area also experiencing demographic shifts with a declining proportion of youth and an increasing senior population. Rossville benefits from strong regional connectivity via I-95, Pulaski Highway, and Philadelphia Road, but faces challenges with traffic congestion and limited pedestrian and transit links between neighborhoods, workplaces, and schools. The community is primarily residential with a commercial center along Eastern Boulevard, and major institutional anchors include MedStar Franklin Square Medical Center and CCBC Essex, which both support local and regional employment, education, and workforce training. The Pulaski Highway node is a typical suburban commercial and light industrial corridor characterized by single-use buildings, large surface parking lots, and car-focused roadways. While busy and supported by nearby residential communities, its outdated land uses and infrastructure limit its full potential. The area previously received a sustainable community designation from the state in 2013 and again in 2018, recognizing its potential for revitalization. However, this designation was not renewed in 2023 as no immediate redevelopment activity was identified, highlighting the need for future planning and reinvestment to unlock its opportunities. The Small Area Plan 11 builds on a wide range of previous planning efforts, ensuring that local strategies align with countywide goals and programs. Key countywide plans reviewed include the Baltimore County Community Health Needs Assessment, the Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan, and the Land Preservation Parks and Recreation Plan, among others. At the local level, the plan also drew on adopted community plans and technical studies spanning the last 35 years. To name a few, the Essex Sustainable Community Action Plan, neighborhood plans for Middle River, Perry Hall, Bowley's Quarters, and other design and corridor studies. While many of these plans contain valuable guidance, some recommendations are now outdated due to changes in the area. This small area plan integrates these past efforts with the vision and goals of Master Plan 2030, creating a comprehensive, up-to-date framework that reflects Area 11's current conditions, challenges, and opportunities. And I'll pass it on to Megan.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the Planning Board. It's lovely to see you again. I'm going to take just a minute and review our public participation chapter. In addition to outlining our public participation opportunities, this chapter also talks about the process that we used to inform all of the great things that Yad was just able to share with you. So our process, the basic timeline, we started last year, about a year ago, late summer, early fall 2024, with some preparations. We engaged with our consultant team. We have many of them here with us this evening. And we really outlined our path moving forward. That path would include 3 major planning phases, and I'll outline them and go into a little bit more detail in just a moment. But the main thing that I want to talk about here on this slide is that our overall intention was to provide as many opportunities as possible through as many channels as possible to allow as many residents and stakeholders as possible to influence the plan, to provide their input, to share what their concerns were, and to help us to shape the vision for the future. So I'll go now phase by phase, beginning with our discovery phase. This was our fact-finding stage. This is where we started to look at existing data on the communities and tried to get and learn as much as possible at a general level about the community so we could begin our conversations with community leaders and council people to get the ball rolling. In this stage, we also started to invite subject matter experts to a series of focus group conversations to talk about the environment, recreation, transportation, business development, land use development, and religious and community services. After those focus group conversations, we then started to open up the process to the larger community with our first online survey, an opinion survey. The major things that came out of this phase of the plan was our understanding that the community has had has challenging views of development. In the past, there's been a lot of development and the infrastructure has not kept up with it, specifically a lot of residential development. So schools, roads are really overburdened in the area. And so moving forward, there needs to be that leveling out. We also understand that traffic safety and mobility in the area was a big concern. That's one of the big things we heard at this stage. And we started to see a really strong environmental ethic, which was only reinforced through all of the remaining phases. At this time, we also started to learn that there's a strong desire for even more green and recreational spaces in the community. Now, in this phase, we did have to do some course corrections. With our online survey, we were asking respondents to let us know where they lived, in which sub-area they lived. And we used that information to compare with the percentage of populations based on census data. We were able to see early on in the survey responses as they were coming in, that there was an underrepresentation from Rossville. And so we had to kind of course correct and amplify our promotion of the survey to that community in particular, so that in the end, when we closed the survey, it was an appropriate representation of each of the sub areas. In our define phase, this is when we started to report back what we were hearing to the community to make sure that we were on the right track. This is when we had our first public meeting. We offered both an in-person and a virtual opportunity. And the findings that came out of here, we reinforced our understanding of the area's strong environmental ethic, as I said, and a desire for more green spaces. At this point, we started to narrow down or talk a little bit more about how that applied to the nodes specifically and how we can introduce more green spaces and open spaces into those nodes. And then we also, talking about the nodes, we identified that there were additional areas in small area 11 that required prioritization for revitalization and development outside of those nodes. And so we started to look at downtown Essex as one of those locations. Our final phase, the delivery phase, is when we started to package everything that we heard, the opportunities, the existing conditions, and our early recommendations into the report that ultimately has come before you. This phase, we also had additional public and community meetings. We had a ton of one-on-one conversations with various county and state agencies to make sure that all of the recommendations we were putting forward aligned with their priorities and capacities. And we also published the draft, had an online version of the draft published online, paired with an online comment form so folks could provide thoughts, feedback on that plan to let us know if there were any revisions that we needed to make. Major findings from this phase, we were able to clarify our overall priorities of those major objectives. Again, we started to see that we understood and reinforced our understanding that the environment is critical to the community. Protection of the environment, ability to enjoy the environment was critical to the community. We started to hear through these conversations that in the plan, we needed to focus more on business support and also business attraction. There are a lot of recommendations focused on support, tourism, but not a ton that were focused on business attraction. So we wanted to include more of that in the plan. We also heard and understood that we weren't giving Hart Miller Island enough love and attention in the plan. So we've been able to adjust the document accordingly. We, at this stage, were also able to refine our understanding of the opportunities along Eastern Boulevard nodes. And I will talk a little bit about that at the end of this presentation. And then lastly, we were really focused on a lot of the things that the Area 11 could do better, but we realized that we weren't doing enough to celebrate what the area was already doing well. We weren't taking that kind of asset approach. So we tried to adjust the plan accordingly. One last course correction here. During this phase, we had our second public meeting, which was not as well attended as we had hoped. And so we didn't feel like we could come back to the community with a draft without having our recommendations reviewed by members of the community to make sure that we were on the right track. And so rather than plan a third public meeting, we decided to come to where the community members would already be. And we tagged on to standing community meetings in 4 of the areas, and a fifth meeting in the Greenlee area where there was not currently a standing meeting, so that we could talk through some of the recommendations and make sure that we were on the right track. At the same time, we really tried to amplify our outreach to community leaders, and we kind of just spammed all of our contacts constantly for the end of August and most of September to get them to help us spread the word. Major takeaways that came out of all of our public input: connectivity is key. We've heard that already through, that the area is very well connected regionally, but we really need to focus more on the local connectivity moving about and around Area 11. We need to celebrate the water. As Yad said, 60% of the county's shoreline is here in Area 11. If you were to stretch it out and head north, you'd be just a few miles shy of New York City. And so it's a tremendous asset, a fantastic resource that we really want to make sure that we're planning for and promoting. Time and again, we heard the desire about a desire for more green spaces at all scales and in all places. And in order to meet local housing needs, we'll need to be strategic about where we are encouraging residential infill. We know that quality of life is what keeps residents around for generations and what attracts visitors and newcomers alike. And so our plan really needs to maintain this area as a desirable place to live, work, play, and age. And then lastly, with future growth and revitalization, we need to take a look at the big picture and the long term. And these are what we really use to help inform the recommendations. And I'll be passing it. Oh, sorry, I'm not yet passing it back to Jess. First, the node and revitalization area takeaways. So the 3 nodes in the area, or 4 nodes in the area, White Marsh Mall, Pulaski Highway, and 2 nodes along Eastern Boulevard. We added, as I said, downtown Essex as one of the revitalization areas. So the major takeaways we have here with White Marsh Mall, the mall should be seen as a catalyst to help to promote future revitalization. We can better take advantage of that area as a transit hub with the existing bus transfer station. We can explore more housing variety here and definitely increase green infrastructure and reduce gray infrastructure. Along the 2 Eastern Boulevard nodes, we want to support the existing aviation institutions and industry. We also want to make sure that we are prioritizing and improving traffic safety and management here especially. Along Eastern Boulevard, as we're maintaining and improving traffic, we can also improve streetscaping and introduce more beautification efforts along the roadways. And again, here we want to reinforce the area as a transit hub or transit node. In Pulaski Highway, one of the most challenging roadways in the area, one of the most dangerous roadways in the area, we need to improve roadway safety for all users as a #1 priority, but also elevate the area as a destination, providing new uses and amenities that support the surrounding residential as well. And then lastly, with downtown Essex, we want to support existing businesses here, as well as attract new businesses, address traffic safety concerns, again, all along Eastern Boulevard. We know that that's a big challenge. And then improving connections between the businesses in downtown Essex and the waterfront and vice versa to take advantage of the visitors attending or visiting both of those assets. And with that, I will turn it back to Jess to go over some of our recommendations.
All right, we're getting down to the nuts and bolts. I'm going to give you an overview of this section of the document, what the recommendations look like, how we developed them, and how the section is structured. So each small area plan serves to advance the countywide recommendations identified in master plan. We zoom into the local level and identify which goals and actions are relevant for this particular area. The small area plan will either reinforce or refine the relevant actions. So reinforcement means that the recommendation is relevant and important to the small area, and it requires no further context or specificity in order to be fully implemented. So these are typically policy related and explored at the county level. Excuse me. Refinement means that a priority does need further exploration to be executed at this local level, and additional detail has been added into the plan. So as described by both Megan and Iad, the SAP 11 process established these 4 topic areas: connectivity, community, environment and open space, and economy. And each topic area has 2 or 3 related objectives, which we'll get into, and key action items from Master Plan 2030 have been pulled out that are related to each objective. All right, let's talk about connectivity. Roadway safety and traffic management were frequent topics of conversation throughout the planning process, as was the lack of connected pedestrian and bike infrastructure. So the objectives of the connectivity recommendations are to improve safety for bicyclists and pedestrians, and to establish an enhanced vehicular and transit strategy through network and system improvements. So here's some examples of what these specific recommendations will look like in this document. The first one comes from the Healthy Communities. That's Goal 2, Action 3. So HC 2.3. Adopt Vision Zero strategies to provide safer streets for all users, including cyclists, pedestrians, and wheelchair users, to reduce traffic-related deaths and injuries to 0 fatalities. So in Area 11, Pulaski Highway had the most pedestrian fatalities in all of the county in 2020 and 2021. And Eastern Boulevard also has significant safety concerns as well. So this recommendation cites specific corridors and specific intersections for safety improvements as outlined in, for example, the 2026 Consolidated Transportation Program, DPWT's Bowley's Quarters Area Traffic Study, and other safety reviews. It also recommends the installation of digital speed signs along Eastern Boulevard and Essex, and it emphasizes looking for opportunities to start with small scale, readily achievable projects, things like modifying traffic signaling, timing, and restriping. Another example of a specific recommendation in this section is livable built environment, action 3, excuse me one second. Goal 3, action 13, so LBE 3.13, to prioritize the construction of an eastbound connection from Philadelphia Road to White Marsh Boulevard and work to eliminate the chronic congestion in the Cowanton Avenue area near Pulaski Highway. So I bring that one up just to say these recommendations are both rooted in knowledge from local residents as well as other county and state reports and studies, and they're very specific. They identify these specific corridors, these specific intersections for safety and traffic management improvements. All right, the next topic, environment and open space. This refers to all outdoor enjoyment, both conservation of natural areas and resources, as well as outdoor recreation. During the final round of community meetings in September, this topic received the most support in terms of importance to residents. The waterfront especially, it's a notable asset, but unfortunately, not all of the public parks are easily accessible. So greater connectivity is desired to and between parks and open spaces, and more outdoor community and third spaces are desired in commercial areas and town centers. So major objectives here aim to conserve and protect habitats and shorelines, while also expanding park and recreational opportunities for people. Here's some example recommendations and what they might look like. Harmony with nature, 1.8, support and fund watershed restoration initiatives. So in Area 11, the focus is around Back River, Middle River, and Saltpeter Creek. Supporting community groups and nonprofits in their restoration efforts is a big part of this recommendation, as well as advocating for the continued corrective actions by the Back River Wastewater Treatment Plant to repair their facility and address past contamination of the adjacent waterways. Another example recommendation here is Healthy Communities 4.3. Ensure county residents who live inside the Erdl live within a safe 15-minute walk of a park or open space. And so this was a master plan recommendation that we refined specifically for this geography by reviewing existing sidewalk connectivity, changes in elevation, the presence of trees for shade, identifying difficult roadway crossings, things like that, especially in areas with vulnerable communities. The community topic is focused on the health, resilience, and livability of the area's neighborhoods. Strong and healthy communities sustain strong and healthy people. Area 11 is home to many long-standing mature neighborhoods, and with many recreational resources, people in this area have a number of opportunities to get active and get outside, but some of these strengths also present challenges. For instance, Area 11 is experiencing aging housing stock, often in high-density, low-income areas that are struggling with high turnover and clustering of residential vacancies. As Area 11 continues to develop, recommendations should focus on improving community resiliency and services, along with ensuring that Area 11 is a desirable and affordable place to live. Here are a couple of example recommendations. In Livable Built Environment 5.8, evaluate and improve the ability of existing and proposed county facilities to withstand the impacts of climate change. So this recommendation comes out of the Baltimore County Hazard Mitigation Plan, and it identifies the flood and windproofing measures needed in county facilities. For this area, that would be specifically Seneca Elementary School and the Bowleys Quarters Fire Station. It also advocates for incorporating climate change considerations into the development of the new Essex branch of the library. This recommendation also identifies the need to update HVAC systems and other infrastructure necessary for cooling, because these systems need to be more efficient and reliable as cooling needs increase with more extreme and prolonged heat waves in the summer. The second example recommendation is from the Livable Built Environment 2.4. Establish age and disability-friendly policies to support and enhance initiatives for aging in place and people with disabilities. This recommendation should focus on high-density neighborhoods generally built before 1980. And these are present throughout Area 11, but they're concentrated in Essex and Middle River. The economy topic focuses on economic activity, economic development, and revitalization. Area 11 offers unique shoreline assets, which can be better leveraged for tourism opportunities. And the area is home to some major anchor institutions. And since 2002, there has been an increase in the total number of jobs. But Area 11 also suffers from high commercial vacancy along key corridors. Additionally, Area 11 faces development hurdles related to regulations, communication, and development process challenges. So major economy-related recommendations aim to support existing businesses, improve area marketing and tourism, and to promote redevelopment and revitalization. Some examples of recommendations in this section include promoting and expanding the county's waterfront resources, including its businesses and recreational opportunities. I am reading from the wrong page. Sorry, give me 1 second. Am I? Great. And so this should improve wayfinding for visitor access to waterfront amenities. Also, RE 1.1, incentivizing and providing marketing strategies to support small businesses. Then from the livable built environment, 1.6, expand strategies to encourage gray field development to incentivize and eliminate barriers to development and redevelopment. So the White Marsh Mall properties, as Megan alluded to earlier, might be ideally suited for this recommendation, as are aging commercial properties and shopping centers off of Eastern Boulevard, Martin Boulevard, and Rossville Boulevard. We already talked a little bit about the nodes and the revitalization areas, but these are the areas that we've identified, and Master Plan 2030 identifies as most suitable for retrofitting. And in decision making around development and infrastructure improvements for these areas, the principles of density, walkability, accessibility, and inclusivity should be centered. Access to abundant green public space should also be prioritized. So in the White Marsh node, redevelopment should capitalize on the site's new status as a CRD, a commercial revitalization district. By focusing on connectivity improvements and diversified land uses, with a primary emphasis on commercial, office, and multifamily residential development. Community discussions about the White Marsh Mall node were heavily focused on the vast quantity of large, underutilized parking lots. So indeed, the master plan vision for this type of node emphasized reducing single-use retail and replacing large parking lots with denser mixed-use development. Connectivity, safety, and major intersection improvements will be crucial for this node, as will collaboration with other county departments like DPWT, as a variety of additional housing developments are already in the works. Future projects in the area should prioritize the reduction of impervious surfaces and an increase in tree cover, green infrastructure, and public green amenity spaces. Pulaski Highway, as noted before, has the highest number of pedestrian traffic fatalities in all of the county. So this plan recommends implementation of clearly marked, highly visible crosswalks and other pedestrian safety measures throughout the node. And a sidewalk network needs to be completed along Pulaski Highway. As some of the existing uses along Pulaski Highway change in the coming years, the county and community should explore revitalization strategies that support existing businesses while growing the number of neighborhood-focused destinations. Infill opportunities should promote a more traditional form of development with buildings brought closer to the roadway. An increase in retail, restaurant, and community services would help nearby residents meet their day-to-day needs. In the Eastern Boulevard node, intersection improvements are needed here, as significant efforts are needed to better control traffic and promote safer, active transportation along all of Eastern Boulevard. The MARC station is very well utilized, and increased parking capacity is needed at this station to serve demand. Along Eastern Avenue near the airport, development opportunities are limited, but where available, mixed-use transit supportive infill development should be prioritized and concentrated closest to the major intersections by Martin Boulevard, near and on the Lockheed Martin site, and at White Marsh Boulevard. Downtown Essex is a priority revitalization area, and opportunities here should encourage infill development with reduced setbacks, mixed-use development, and uses that increase retail, restaurant, and community service access. The existing park and ride lot presents a very strong opportunity for mixed-use infill, as do other vacant and underutilized parcels along Eastern Boulevard. This corridor in general struggles with commercial vacancy, and work being done through the Essex CDC and county programs should be uplifted and supported to foster economic development, small business resiliency, and business attraction and retention. Eastern Boulevard in this area is a very busy state roadway, and it's been cited as a safety concern for travelers in every mode of transportation. So general traffic and pedestrian safety improvements are needed along the entire corridor, as is improved transit access and infrastructure for buses. Adjacent to the roadways, streetscaping, signage, and wayfinding improvements could reinforce downtown Essex as a destination, give the corridor a sense of place, and connect the area with the nearby waterfront amenities. And I'm going to bring Megan back up.
Thank you. Thank you all for sticking with us for this long with an area at 75 square miles. We quite literally have a lot of land to cover, a lot of ground to cover. So we're trying to keep this as efficient and clear as possible. Now I'm going to get into the implementation of the chapter of the report. It's my suspicion that anybody who wants to be involved in helping this plan come to fruition will either dog-ear these pages or rip them straight out of the document and pin them to their wall to keep track of any progress that they're making. So the implementation table, Jess was able to provide a few examples of the recommendations that you'll find in the report. There are a total of 92 Master Plan 2030 recommendations that have been carried forward for Small Area 11. So we really wanted to be able to make it as clear as possible how we're going to tackle them one at a time and if there's any overlap. So this table here, very complex, a number of pages. I'm going to walk you through the different elements in this table that hopefully will make it as usable as possible. So at the far left, you'll have the goal ID. Jess was referring to that a bunch. It refers to the vision framework, principles, LBE, livable built environment, for instance, from Master Plan 2030, and the goal and the action number. The action item in bold text, you'll see the text verbatim from Master Plan 2030. That's what we've carried forward. Beneath that, you'll see whether or not the recommendation is one that we are reinforcing, in which case it will just say reinforce, or if it's one that we are providing refinement for. And so there will be additional text below the Master Plan 2030 recommendation to explain what that refinement includes. As Jess was saying, in a couple instances, we pinpoint specific geographies, intersections, sites, or priorities for Small Area 11 in that text. The next two columns look at the partners. There's a column for lead partner. Typically, this is the county agency that has purview over the topic that's being discussed. In some instances, we might have a community partner as a co-lead, but always there will be a county agency as that lead partner. In the support partners column, we've identified additional county agencies and groups, community groups, nonprofits, or state agencies that we might want to bring in to help us implement some of the recommendations. Nobody's being obligated. So if we identify a community group here, they're not obligated. We just think that they are the ones that either need to know about this recommendation moving forward or have the personal expertise and experience to be able to help that recommendation come about in the most effective and successful way as possible. The SAP 11 timeframe column is our estimated timeframe for when an action will be implemented. We have short, medium, and long term. It doesn't reflect priority. There might be some items that are listed as long term, but they're very high priorities, a very high priority for the community. And additionally, something that says long-term, we might want to get started in the near term to plan and set the stage for that action to be tackled down the road. So that's kind of an estimate and just helping us understand when we'll start to see the fruits of our labor. The action overlap category is our attempt to identify other actions throughout this area plan that will be best to implement in tandem or have some degree of overlap. So if we're starting to tackle one thing that has some overlap down the road, do we have some efficiency if we're able to tackle them together, or can we learn something about one another if we're tackling them with that consideration in mind? Lastly, the potential resources column is where we've done our best to identify existing funding resources or county resources that can be used to help implement some of these actions. Not every item has this cell filled out. So this is meant to be a living document. As I said, our expectation is that people will constantly be referring to this table. One of the recommendations that we explain in the implementation chapter is that it's great to have perhaps an annual check-in with all of the community partners, the county partners, to see what progress we've been able to make. And in those conversations, it's a great time to identify additional resources that we maybe want to consider for some of those other recommendations. The appendix, just really quickly, this is where we're showing all of our work. The scans from all of the activities that we had at our public meetings, public survey results, participants who are engaged in the focus groups. There's a bunch of good information there. You can get into fine grained details if you'd like to. I'll just let you choose how you want to flip through that. And then lastly, ideally, we would have given you a perfect plan right before you. The perfectionist in me, however, will continue to look at the document and always find something to tweak. And in addition, we've had some really great conversations with community partners, and through those conversations have identified a few things that we want to address that aren't currently reflected in the version you have before you. So I'm going to just run through these really quickly. First, throughout, somehow Carroll Island disappeared on a couple of the graphics, so we're going to make sure that that is showing on all the graphics. We also had some great conversations with the Essex Middle River Civic Council and have talked about how we really need to be talking about Lafarge a little bit more specifically in the document, talking about the eco park overlay and the need to make some connections. So there are a few places on here where we want to add some of that language to the document. Page 61, we just want to make sure that we didn't conclude or talk about how we didn't conclude with one phase, but it included. Page 78, we want to expand our language. Again, this is related to Lafarge. We want to make sure that we're being more specific about a potential connection, roadway connection. Currently, the document says that a roadway connection is needed to be able to support the existing businesses on Earls Road and any future growth there, but we don't specifically call out where or how that would happen. So we'll add some more of that specificity to the document. We also, jumping down to page 107 and 110, we want to make sure that we're talking more about the opportunities at the current Essex Library site once that library does relocate. So we're going to include that specific site in a few of the recommendations where that's relevant. We also, a big change that we want to make is we've already, after conversations with MDOT and community members, we are trying to be very particular about the language we're using around transit-oriented or transit-supportive development. The site at the MARC station at Martin State Airport was at one point a transit-oriented development designation. That's since been removed. And we really, through our conversations, understand that TOD, capital TOD, is not necessarily appropriate here. But transit supportive development is, or transit supportive improvements are. And so we want to be really clear about what we mean by that and change some of that language in the document. The pages 119, 121, we need to be a little bit more specific about what is permitted at Lockheed Martin. Those sites through the voluntary cleanup have some restrictions on future uses that we didn't call out specifically in the report. So we're going to be a little bit clearer about that and what that site does have as potential in the future. And then this next one, we really loved hearing the EMRCC, the Essex Middle River Civic Council, is really eager to be a partner and wanted to be included in the implementation table on a couple of actions. So we'll be adding them there. We also, big oversight, didn't have a zoning map in the document. So we'll be adding that to the appendix. And then lastly, there's a table that has a total row that doesn't make any sense. So we're going to remove that. And with that, we really appreciate your time. We're going to open it up to questions and hopefully clarify some things for you guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was quite comprehensive. Does any member of the board have any questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, I actually spent some time yesterday looking at this whole thing, and I have to say, for the first one out of the gate, this is pretty well done.
Thank you.
I think you guys did a great job. It was well organized. It was clear to me because I don't know these areas probably as well as I should. The graphics were beautiful, I thought, and I just wanted to say I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at it, but it's I think well done.
Thank you. Appreciate you saying that.
Ms. Brophy?
So, I know this is the first small area plan after master, plan 2030. So what is the anticipated timeline of all of these? Like Mr. Heckman said, this is very involved. It was very good. I appreciate you guys, like, I guess, rejigging yourselves after seeing like Rossville wasn't participating. So you're like, let's market to them. So you're trying to get more participation, but like, what is the timing of once this, let's just say, gets approved, of like moving forward with every other small area plan? Because I mean, are we going to be in 2030 and they're not all done yet, and then we're like on to the next master plan?
Thanks. So we are trying to be very ambitious to tackle as many, if not all of them, before the next master plan as possible. We've begun already with the next small area, which is small area 1 on the opposite side of the county. There will be a public meeting coming up, I believe in December for that. So that information will be online soon if it isn't already. The timeline, we don't have a list of or a sequence that we will be following. What we have is a methodology or a strategy. So there are many factors that come into play. One is going to be staff capacity, and that changes depending on other projects or things that come up in the area. But we also want to try to time them so that they are a small area plan is being completed around the same time as a relevant or overlapping sustainable community renewal, so that we can kind of do two things at once with those two plans and action items. And then in addition, we need to take into account the CZMP process and the next round of getting ready for the master plan 2040. So we kind of have a timeline that we or a method that we want to follow, but we have to be a little bit flexible. But small area plan 1 is going to be the next one. We've already started that. And then we're going to try to move around the county. Oh, and one other thing. In addition to taking into consideration staff capacity, sustainable community renewals, and the upcoming CZMP, we also have taken a look at which areas do or do not have a ton of community plans already. And so if a community or an area does not have a number of community plans, they're going to be higher on the list. We're going to try to address them sooner rather than later.
Okay. And then just one other question. How do these recommendations, because let's admit everything needs funding, tie into like CIP, which we're kind of going through right now for funding?
That's a great question. So we, the three of us as district planners, have constant communication with our community leaders and representatives. I've tried to reach out to some of mine to already try to tee up some of these things. As I was talking about it, it would be ideal if there's like an annual check-in with community groups to talk about these, the recommendations. And if that could happen perhaps in early, middle summer, then we could talk about which ones should go before for the next CIP program. So at this point, the CIP for fiscal year 27 is already underway. There might be some opportunities to try to support some of this stuff, but it likely will be the future rounds will be able to be a little bit more proactive and recommend to tie into the CIP program.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Other question, Mr. Hinton?
And excuse me, I agree. I think this was very detailed, very comprehensive. So great job to you and your team. I do think, living in this area, it is a difficult area to kind of navigate, right? You talked a lot about, how people want more to attract more businesses, right? But at the same time, we're down zoning and changing, land use over there where businesses really don't want to come. So I think that's something that we have to tackle, which moves me to my main question, where you're adding the EMRC as a partner. Like, what does that mean, and what does that mean by you adding them, and then how does that affect other groups that may want to get involved in that area?
Great question. So the implementation table, anybody who wants to be involved, I'll add them. We want to have as many people as possible involved, or as many groups as possible involved in those action items. As I think I said earlier, nobody is obligated to participate in if they're a community group and they've been identified there. They just have some sort of understanding or would be impacted in some way. So we took a stab at who's going to be impacted and listing some of them there. I'm certain that we've missed folks, and so we will continue to revise that, and we can. And then in this if there's an annual check-in, that's a great time for other folks or groups to come in and say, we already focus on this sort of a thing. Please include us, add us to that table. Or a group can say, you know what, this isn't really in our wheelhouse. We're probably not the most relevant group to be there. So long story short, like we will add whomever wants to be there, and we want to make sure that anybody who's impacted is in there.
Got it. And then just a follow-up question. I appreciate that answer. Um, Being in the as a planner, how do you envision balancing that request, right? Of wanting to attract new businesses, but we're also constantly, downzoning and creating eco parks and, putting land in and protection so that you can't build on, right? Because that area is growing faster than any place in the county, but there's no schools. You talk about the Greenlee community, half of the Greenlee community goes to different schools in the same HOA. But, I see a lot of downzoning of land there versus, stuff that would attract business that sounds like the community does want.
Mm-hmm. So I think that is an ongoing conversation. We have opportunities to adjust zoning, and if the trend has been things are being downzoned, and we really want to make sure that we're providing the opportunity for the uses that the community desires to come to the area, there is the process to be able to adjust those and perhaps shift some of those trends. Otherwise, it really involves bigger conversations and having everybody involved at the table to say strategically where are the places that can currently support new businesses or some of these evolutions, and how do we be strategic about directing things there? Is that the most appropriate place for it? The CZMP process, we can make some of those tweaks, but it's really one of those big takeaways was how do you think big picture, long term, and be strategic about where some of these uses end up. So those conversations, I think, should be ongoing with the community.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Other questions?
If I may just- we know it's the county council. But one of the things that we have lacked is community-based plans that help us make recommendations regarding potential zoning changes. As you who were here for CZMP recall, if a council member said, we want same to same, in other words, it's zone BL and you want to keep it BL, if we have a community plan that says this should be something else or should be considered, it gives the staff and the board more opportunity to say, well, it shouldn't be BL. It should be something else to accommodate this level of economic growth or perhaps mixed use or whatever else it may be. So by establishing these community-based plans, even though it's a very large area, as you saw, it gives, I think, all of us a better opportunity to raise those opportunities to create that different balance, which is obviously an element throughout here, is how do you strike the balance that we really need between growth and infrastructure and service needs and zoning. So.
Mr. Heckman?
I did have a question. As I was reading through it, it was very clear to me, like how we would like turn around the White Marsh Mall site because there's precedent for that, like in Hunt Valley. So I can visualize that. But when we got to the Essex neighborhood, which is probably, maybe arguably one of the more challenged sub-communities, it has the lowest medium income, it has an aging population and the housing stock, and it's dense, and the housing stock is probably the oldest. I couldn't visualize what we were recommending to do with that area to improve the lot. And I mean, we identified some infill sites. I don't know if that's commercial or residential. And then we use words like we want to promote redevelopment. Like, yeah, but what does that look like? And what are we recommending that will, in 10 years, we will see an improvement in that neighborhood? And I just didn't, maybe because I didn't read the entire thing, but I felt like that one neighborhood was a little lacking in some real concrete suggestions.
I think that's fair feedback. I mean, we've been in looking at the plan, we have been vague in some of those infill or redevelopment because those conversations should be had more at a site by site level than at this scale. We were able to identify where some of that might be most supportive of the community or where those opportunities exist. But I think our intention was to encourage those conversations to happen on a site by site level. That said, in downtown Essex, we really want to build upon, especially along Eastern Boulevard, the great work of the Essex CDC. And so we want to see the continued vibrancy that they're already promoting and encouraging along that commercial area to be continued in a way that supports the existing residents. But I don't know, maybe this isn't going to be the most satisfactory answer. I think we are intentionally vague.
Yeah, I just feel like maybe that area needs a bolder move
Mhm.
or vision.
Mhm.
It's just my.
Ms. German.
Mark, I echo that. I want to say first, awesome job on this.
Thank you.
You guys really know how to do strategic planning. It's really obvious and very impressive. I think that there's a need to take one area, I'm not sure which one, and make a bold splash, like go to White Marsh Mall and really start, digging up the parking lot and putting in trees. And the public needs to see action. And this is a lot of plans, a lot of words and so forth, but pick Eastern Boulevard, fix it, or pick White Marsh Mall, fix that, but have the community see that stuff is getting done. And, most people, honestly, that's a lot of, what was it, 238 pages or something?
Mhm.
I was starting to count the pages towards the end.
161 just of the body and then the appendixes.
Yeah,
there's
right.
More pages.
But, like one of the comments is uh, a healthy housing market. What exactly does that look like? I think people need to see something bold. And, I live in White Marsh, so I would love to see it happen at White Marsh Mall, obviously.
too.
But I also grew up in the area, and Lord knows Eastern Boulevard needs a whole lot. So that's just a comment. I'm not sure where it's going to all go next. I guess I'm having a difficult time seeing the exact vision, and you do a lot of detailed work on the vision. I just want to see something happen.
Yeah, so I appreciate you saying that. One of my hopes whenever I work on a plan is try to make it as actionable as possible so that it doesn't just end up collecting dust on a shelf. So I did try to make sure that this kind of had that process for how to move forward. We were just talking today, my supervisor and I, about how we can start to get the ball rolling on some of these by looking at the action items and identifying which ones are kind of low-hanging fruit, early, like short time frame that we can actually get started on right away. So that we can have those conversations and start to have things actually happen to get people inspired and motivated and eager to see more change happening over time. I also live in White Marsh, and I hope it's White Marsh too. But we've identified the nodes as really priority areas, and we've been a little bit more specific, albeit still a little bit vague. But what are the opportunities are there so that we can start to concentrate our efforts a little bit, and then hopefully that will span outward.
I mean, it's a dilemma. You have small, one comment was small scale improvements, low hanging fruit. That's always a good idea. But is it bold enough to really get public support?
Mr. Hinton.
Now, Bev, I think you said what probably a lot of us are thinking. And I didn't want to say it because you guys have done such an excellent job. I mean, this presentation is incredible. But I do think sitting on this board and living in this county and wanting to have a future to live here long term, I think we do need to balance what the community input versus what's realistic, right? And the reality is, the downtown Essex and things it's such a dense area that if you do infill building in Essex, that's not going to change the demographics when you start talking to businesses about do they want to invest and come there. So when we talk about revitalizing Essex, it does need work. But for that to be the bold vision, I mean, I'm be 70 years old before we start to see some real progress there. I think when I look at White Marsh Mall, it's a blank canvas almost, right? You can come up with a bold vision and get people excited and say, let's do this now. Another area that is already undergrowing, which I'm surprised that it's not on here as one of the nodes, is that 43 overlay. I mean, that has so much potential that's been untapped, and you have people that live there that are trying to leave that neighborhood because it's not reaching its potential. Because again, we are zoning those areas. We're changing stuff to eco parks. You got $1 million homes with no schools. So it's like we have two gems in our hands, and we're not focusing on them. If we focus on those two areas, right, it's going to trickle down. It's going to spread to Essex. Then you're going to have more developers or more people that want to do infill builders or start to revitalize these houses, and people will have more equity in their homes to do it themselves. So I do think what Bev said is spot on, and I'm not trying to pile on because again I think this is incredible what you have done, and like what Director Lafferty said, like having these local plans is something that the county has missed for so long. But now it's like, okay, how do we take this great plan and streamline it and pick, one or two things and say, let's do it.
Mr. Array?
You got to give it a second. You got to give it a second, Peter. Like,
Yeah.
there you go.
Thank you. I think, from my perspective, echo everyone here today. Wonderful job. And I think, Steve, you guys are in the wrong profession. You should be on TV. You guys are good. Very good to put things together. And unfortunately, you do not control the budget.
That's true.
You've given out, a roadmap for discussion. Budget, if you have control over the budget, you get everything done. Am I right? So you are the messenger. You've done a great job, analysis, presentation for discussion. And of course, the county council gets involved, budgets. We don't approve budgets. So wonderful job. We just have to appreciate what you've done. You've laid out the foundation, recommendations, step by step. And maybe down the road, maybe private companies may want to partner with us to get some of this implemented. So how that is going to be done, you don't know yet. This is just such a big foundation that you've laid down for. So we appreciate that.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that.
Other questions? Mr. Hackman?
Just one last comment. It's like the curse of doing a really good job, right? You whet our appetite and we want to see more.
No good deed goes unpunished.
Something like that.
I have a couple of quick questions. I don't know if we have any speakers, but I want to give them some time. One is, to what degree, is the Department of Economic Development involved in developing these plans?
They've been heavily involved. So Michael McLean specifically has been engaged from the very beginning. He attended, I think, every single focus group just to hear what everybody had to say, and he chimed in those conversations as well. We additionally had one-on-one conversations with that department to go through what progress they've made on the Master Plan 2030 actions so far, to understand what would they still need to do, or if any of them are already, they can cross that off the list. So they had that chance to weigh in. We provided them with the draft and gave them the chance to provide comment as well. So they've been a strong partner.
And then this is sort of a broader question. How do we balance the input of specific communities, which I can often guess what kind of input they're going to give, versus what we need throughout the county and throughout the region? I mean, how do we balance those kind? And I may talk a little more about this. We need more housing in, the controller's office just came out with a report and said we need almost 600,000 units in the state over the next 20 years. I will guarantee you most neighborhoods won't support a lot of new development because they almost never do. So how do you balance off these sort of broader needs of the county, the region, with the specific request of the neighborhoods when you're trying to develop these plans?
I'll share what our approach has been. So we from Master Plan 2030, we saw that list of what those countywide needs and priorities were. And so our task was to try to funnel it down to where it's most appropriate at the Area 11 level. We tried to do that by having conversations with the communities to see where they were in alignment with what needed to happen and to understand if some of those strategies, housing, for example, was really appropriate or achievable in a certain community. But we've also, through our public, like a very public participatory process, we've tried to help communities to see that the conversations that happen in those rooms are not the only conversations that are being had around this area or the countywide. And so we've tried to, and the appendix is where we try to do a lot of that, to show that we've had conversations, and while this community perhaps prioritized XYZ, this community prioritized ABC. And so we want to make sure that both of those are being taken into consideration and balanced. But the opportunity to show that those conversations are happening, even if the people who participated at one meeting weren't privy to that, is I think really important in helping people to see that those are indeed needs and priorities, and they need to be addressed somewhere. And so that's hopefully supportive of an understanding of why and where we've made the decisions in our plan.
Anyone? Oh, Mr. Hinton.
Just want to piggyback on what our chairman just said. I think that is the biggest thing, right? So most communities are against development. I mean, I like to say I'm pro-development, but when I see new houses built in my neighborhood, I hate it, right? But I think we have to have more conversations about what development really is. So one thing that most community folks agree on is the schools. So if you don't have any tax revenue or money to build schools, let alone put teachers in there to pay their salaries, maybe you can have conversations about, hey, if we're starting to increase development, if we have more tax revenue coming to the county, we can have more services, we can have more opportunities to create things. So sometimes we have to understand that development can be the window to cure a lot of our needs and issues in the community. And I always give the example of Turner Station. Turner Station was once a thriving historical Black neighborhood, one of the best neighborhoods in the whole country. But you look at it, it hasn't changed in 70 years since my grandmother and grandfather left. So when you don't develop, when you don't improve things, you die. Communities die. So we have to be open to change. That's the only constant in this world. And I think politicians, especially, not just our council folks or state legislators, but to be a good legislator, you have to be agreeable. And when you're agreeable, you're not changing anything. You're not doing the right thing. You're just appeasing people, and then you get their votes, and then you look back on these communities like Essex, like Turner Station, like Dundalk, and you say, well, what happened? So I think it's time we have tough conversations and really push this county forward.
Mr. Array, and then one of these days we'll get the hang of these things. But not today.
I just want to say that we are not trying to beat you over the head because you are just the messengers. Everything that is being said here today, some of them are true, some of them are far-fetched, like what you've proposed. Some of them will never be implemented in 70. Even if I live to be 140, some of them may never be.
We're working on it.
Because number one, so many things that are involved, budgets, agreement by communities. So you've done your part. So we're not treating you, you are not a witness. You've done a great job to give us something to work. And you don't make that final determination. And we appreciate that.
I'm going to stop. We will have another shot at asking questions after we do the public comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will now call upon those who have completed the sign-in sheet located in the Jefferson Building lobby to speak on this topic. Speakers will be called in the order that they registered. Speakers, please remember to limit your comments to 2 minutes or less. Provide your name and organization you represent if applicable.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our first speaker is Phyllis Joris.
Good evening, Planning Board. My name is Phyllis Joris. I'm the Executive Director of Neighbor Space of Baltimore County. I hope that rings a bell. If not, we're a nonprofit land trust that works to enhance the livability of communities inside the URDL. So that's plenty of communities inside Small Area 11. And we do that by working closely with those communities to protect, restore, and steward land for pocket parks, gardens, trails, natural areas. We have a park in Turner Station. I am here today just to congratulate the planning team on this draft plan. I think it's excellent. I really enjoyed reading through it. It's also very pretty. And I was especially excited by the process too. I love the level of participation that they were able to get. I know how hard it is to get people to turn out to meetings. They were successful in doing that and even pivoted when they weren't. So I appreciate that. I also want to offer our services. So as Megan mentioned, clearly open space and environment was a hot topic for these communities. And I'm going to quote the plan. There's an interest in celebrating nature at all scales and a desire for more nearby nature to be woven into the fabric of the community. I'm going to steal that. Nearby nature sounds really good. I like that. That's exactly what Neighborspace does. We've been doing it for 20 years, retrofitting parks into older neighborhoods. Neighborhoods like Turner Station, we can actually turn them, beautify them and provide parks, even if there hasn't been a lot of change in a long time. We have one park currently in Small Area 11. It's one of my favorites. It's 16 acres of really healthy woods, which is kind of exceptional in an urban area. It's right behind the Costco on Pulaski Highway. There's a little gem hidden back there. So I'd love to do more of that here and in future small areas. I wanted to add that the timing is great. We are ready to start pivoting, to start doing more proactive approach to restoration. And I even have dollars to fund this work. So I hope the Department of Planning will reach out to me. If not, I will be in touch.
Very much.
Next up, we have Chrissy Erb.
Thank you. My name's Chrissy Erb. I'm the Executive Director of the Essex Community Development Corporation, also known as Essex CDC. I'm incredibly thrilled to be here today. I feel a little unprepared because there have been a bunch of changes based on the feedback that we've given. The process was amazing. You guys should really be proud of that. And the outcome, I think, has been incredible, and it continues to be a living document. I just want to point out a few quick things. I know I have a short time frame. This is a critical document for us that helps us set the tone for progress in Essex. We've been working for years, well before my time. The Chamber of Commerce, Sharon Keene, is here. She had been working on things before I came on board. I came on board to the Chamber through the Essex Reimagined initiative. And now we've branched off and become our own organization, and we are making great strides. Come to Essex, see Essex, come to Eastern Boulevard and see the waterfront that is very close to Eastern Boulevard. It's a huge asset. So having this document helps us put on paper through the government kind of what the plans are. It gives us validation and credibility for what we're doing. And it's something that we can use to go to funders, state of Maryland, private funders, and say, we're on this list. We're doing this important work already. And here are the plans for going forward. So I want to bring up something to your point, Vice Chairwoman, about the CIP. We actually did put in a proposal for getting some funding to support economic development in Essex that could be tied to this. So I just wanted to point that out. But really, it's great to see it all laid out. The annual check-in is an incredible opportunity to have it continue to be an iterative process. And I think it's really important to have a document like this that we as organizations can call on. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
And our last speaker is Sharon Keene.
Good evening, members of the Planning Board. I'm Sharon Keene. I'm the president of the Chesapeake Gateway Chamber of Commerce. We represent the voice of business in Eastern Baltimore County, but we also care quite a great deal about the quality of life in the area, and we have been working to revitalize our older communities. I wanted to speak this evening on behalf of the Chamber to express our appreciation for being included in the process of creating this first small area plan. Along with other stakeholders, we appreciated being invited to provide feedback throughout the entire process. We also want to thank Megan, Chess, Iad, Steve, and the whole team over at the Planning Department for taking the time to listen to the concerns that we brought up and incorporate numerous recommendations into the draft plan. So I think this was important because many of the professionals in the Planning Department, while they know so much about planning, they are still learning about the history of the area, and the input they received historically will not only help make the plan a better product, but will help them in their jobs moving forward. So it's evident that a tremendous amount of work went into the creation of this plan. There's a lot of good information and recommendations in there. It's attractively presented, as was said before, and the sheer volume of pages is an indicator of all the detail that was considered. We have confidence that the final plan will serve as an excellent guide moving forward, and we're glad to hear that it'll be considered a dynamic strategy that can be drilled down on, as was mentioned by several folks, in certain areas and adjusted based on new information and any shifts in the market. So thank you to the team for all your hard work on this important plan for the community.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else on the board have any additional thoughts? Comments? I have a couple more, and I'm not sure who to address it to. One, how do we address the fact that Eastern Avenue, Pulaski Highway are both state roads, and the challenge of trying to do revitalization along state highways, we know, is often fraught?
I'll chime in, and then if anybody wants to jump in as well, you're welcome to. So both of those roads, being state roads, will have to involve conversations with MDOT and other entities. And the implementation table, we've tried to outline or specify that. Eastern specifically has had quite a few traffic studies, and some are ongoing right now. And so we, in many ways, will defer to the outcomes of those studies to identify what the specific strategies are on those. But it will involve conversations utilizing the consolidated transportation program to maintain that communication with the state about what some of our priorities are, and to help to steer the direction towards some of the recommendations that we identify in the plan.
Thank you. Second, you mentioned in the revisions about putting in the zoning maps. I think it's a great idea. You may also want to consider, and again, whether it's for this plan or for the future plans, done a ton of work for this one. We know, for example, the adequate facilities rules state, that school capacity becomes a potential bind. So when I've looked, I know that, anyway, it would be interesting to know, like, which schools in that area are overcrowded, which ones are very underutilized. I know there are some schools in that area that are like at 60% capacity, so it does vary. But that may be useful in terms of trying to think, what will we need in some places to augment these things?
Right, that's a great suggestion. Thank you.
And then and this sort of ties along with Mr. Heckman's question. This phrase balanced housing. No idea what that means. I mean, and frankly, the couple of action points on housing were rather vague. I mean, it goes back to my point before. I think the county needs to think seriously about where we're going to, if we're going to grow, where are we going to grow? And I think constantly deferring, because no one really wants to have any growth by them. That's my experience. That if we're not sort of, asking the neighborhoods, the communities a little more forcefully, well, where could you at least tolerate it? It's just, again, more going forward. This is an amazing document. You guys have put in a ton of work.
Thank you. I appreciate that comment. And I think you all have acknowledged how some of these topics, housing specifically, can be quite sensitive, and in some ways that might be why we're a little bit vague about it. But those conversations with the implementation should be ongoing, like you said, and to figure out, okay, where hopefully more than tolerate, but
Because the flip side, and I mean, I've been on the board long enough, you know, someone will propose doing some project and someone will say, but the small area plan or this community plan doesn't call, it calls for turning everything into green space or not doing, and so it gets thrown back that way as well. And so I understand the reluctance, you're trying to accommodate the various people, but in so doing, it just creates further friction to get things done.
I echo that. So I was taking notes. I actually wrote down what is balanced housing and, or a healthy housing market. I don't know what that is, but I can tell you in White Marsh, in this area, that's a hot button topic that quickly turns from affordable housing to Section 8 housing. There's a lot of emotion involved in it. Much of it is based on incorrect information. But in this geographic area, a lot of work has been done to build schools so that the schools are not overcrowded. And that's why as soon as you talk about housing in White Marsh, and I know this doesn't spill into Perry Hall in Nottingham, but that will turn people against this plan in a heartbeat if they start talking about housing.
Yeah,
But the schools in that plan, all of them are overcrowded.
Are they?
Well,
Almost all, because if you look
I'm
at,
not sure about that in Essex, and I'm not sure that all the schools in Essex
Well,
are overcrowded.
not all, but the majority of the schools that are overcrowded in county are overwhelmingly on the east side.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
but they're more like, I mean, but we can have
Like
this discussion.
Nottingham, which is in that's overcrowded. Overly, which is in
Well,
that plan, is
Well,
overcrowded. They're
yeah, what happens is they build a new school and it is quickly right at capacity. So if you talk about building more houses and, again, getting back to White Marsh Mall, there's so much potential there to have that, I think about Hunt Valley and what they've done there. But the housing issue is, it makes people get really, really crazy.
this is somewhat separate from small area plan 11, but just to enlighten the group on some of the conversations we've been having internally in the department, we recognize that talking about affordable, attainable housing can stir up some really intense emotions in folks. And so we're starting to have bigger conversations about what language do we use when we talk about this? How can we get to the root of people's concerns and help to steer the conversation in a really productive way so that we can identify the ideal location. So that's outside of the Area 11 plan. That's just general, but we're certainly aware of the emotions that comes behind that.
Tough one.
Mr.
Any
Chairman,
other-
if
Oh,
I
yes.
may, just that this is a document presented to the planning board. The planning board then makes a recommendation to the county council. Should there be changes that you feel are appropriate, that's your role and right, so that however some of these issues may want to be addressed, it's now basically in your purview to do so before a vote's taken at the next meeting. And if you have any thoughts, suggestions, please feed them to Megan, through Taylor if you want, and let us see how that might play out. Similar to the revisions that were listed that came after the document was actually drafted for you, that we're open certainly to having those conversations. As to the housing issue, part of the challenge is if you have no school capacity, you can't build housing. And right now, because of the current adequate public facilities ordinance in the county, that does not provide for any adjacency consideration, most of the school districts are shut down or will be in the next 3 years, which then further limits the opportunities of White Marsh Mall or places like that. So that's still a significant issue that needs to be grappled with countywide.
Any other thoughts, comments? Thank you all very much. If there are no further questions, this concludes the public hearing. As Mr. Lafferty was saying, this item will be voted on at our next board meeting on November 20th, which will be in person. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second? Yes, all those in favor?
Aye.
See you all in a couple of weeks.
Because I talk. Yeah. I loved hearing it was.
Spend more money going to,
Speaking, I'm gonna text it to you. I don't know. I mean, it's the back of you. I don't.